Situation here in Sarasota is starting to turn dire. At first we had, okay, we gotta go. Yeah.
Okay, so what just happened? Sarasota just got hit by a major hurricane, which I'm not exactly sure if that has ever happened before, but what is the aftermath of this storm? Was it everything that it was predicted to be? Let's break it down. What's up guys, my name is Matt Light. I've been a resident in Sarasota for over 25 years and I now run a small real estate team in our area. I've been through dozens of hurricanes, but this one was a little bit different. For starters, I've never actually been in the eye of storm before until this one, which was a really kind of weird, eerie experience when like at 9 o'clock at night is when it went over my house and it was so quiet. It was so just still outside. So totally different experience for me. But in this video today, I'm gonna talk about what was predicted to happen versus what actually happened. I wanted to get this video out like right after the storm, but what was most important was not getting videos out, is helping people with their homes, getting gas for people, for generators, just helping people get their life back to normal. But now I'm back in the office and I get to get this out to you guys. So let's recap the 3 hurricanes that have passed through in the last month. First, we've got Hurricane Debbie on August 4th, which mainly just dumped a bunch of rain in Sarasota, which caused flooding in certain parts as it was rated, I believe it was the 1 in 500 year flood. Then you got Hurricane Helene, which came through on September 26th, which was honestly the first time that I remember us ever experiencing storm surge and damage. And if you watched my aftermath video of that, I was able to talk to a resident where they had never had a storm surge at that particular complex, and they did for that one. And now we just had Hurricane Milton with landfall being Siesta Key literally less than 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene came through, and this was on Wednesday night, October 9th. Now, many of you may or may not have been watching my aftermath video from Hurricane Helene, where I was able to get out in the islands and keys the next morning to show you footage of everything before they closed the bridges down. Shortly after that video, all of us in Sarasota started hearing about another potential storm, which obviously turned into Hurricane Milton. And things that we were hearing were a lot about the strength of this storm, that this was a storm that was the largest threat in the Northern Hemisphere in the world in over a century. And this storm had strengthened so much in the Gulf of Mexico that it was reaching its mathematical limit. Apparently, the Earth's atmosphere has a limit for how much a storm can strengthen based on pressure and other things that I know nothing about. And I think at one point, winds had reached over 190 miles an hour. Oh, and this storm was coming right for Sarasota. Others boarded up their homes and prepared for the worst. So let me show you some video clips that I took along with others that I compiled to show you the effects this storm had on Sarasota. And then I'm gonna give you my thoughts on the overall damage and what we can expect moving forward. Also, what you can expect in terms of Sarasota real estate market moving forward as well.
The northern eye wall, all of the weather that Robert was showing, all the weather that you're seeing in Hillsborough County, and in Pinellas County, and in northern Manatee County. That is the northern eye wall of this storm, and that's where all of the weather is. This will be the first major hurricane to hit the Bay Area directly in 103 years, and there's absolutely no way around it. But what will be dramatically different is the surge totals, and you guys know this. We've been talking about it for days on end. So wherever landfall occurs, wherever that eye occurs, crosses land, at that point and to the right is where the surge will be the highest. Because surge has nothing to do with winds. It's all about how big a storm is that literally pushes the water to the coast. Now, we are no longer looking at models. You know, this is when you throw the models out the window and you look out the window.
Now, there are obviously other areas that were affected way more, like up into North Bradenton and whatnot, but in terms of Sarasota and our islands and keys, honestly, I didn't think it was all that bad in comparison to what we had just experienced 13 days later from Helene. 75% of Sarasota was without power after the storm came through, and many buildings that were made of metal, the roofs came off, and there was a lot of fallen trees and tree branches in the roads that you kind of saw in those video clips, and they got to be cleaned up. Also, we saw pool cages get blown over as well. Now, there are certainly houses that did experience much more devastation. I've got a friend who lives on Longboat Key on the water on the bay side. On his specific house, the landscape lights didn't even move. Like, that's crazy. But then his neighbor's house had severe roof damage where most of the roof was actually gone. And as far as storm surge goes, I reached out to someone within the EOC, Emergency Operations Center here in Sarasota, and I asked, how high did the surge actually get from Hurricane Milton? And they believe it to be around 6 feet of surge, which 2 weeks prior, Hurricane Helene had essentially the same thing, if not more. So the flooding damages from Milton weren't as devastating because many of these homes, they were already in the process of having all their drywall whipped out and clearing out all their personal belongings from 2 weeks ago. So now when Milton came through, you may have noticed some of those photos, like from the Herald Tribune, had couches out in the streets. Well, that's because they were sitting at the curb waiting for trash pickup, and then the surge came and they either floated in the street or the winds pushed them out into the street. So a lot of the financial impact was already done from 2 weeks prior when Helene came through. Now, this would be totally different if Helene came through a month ago and all these places had been restored and restorated and back up and running, but honestly, that just wasn't the case. You can see my drone shot from a boat marina on the south side of Siesta Key. None of those boats even moved through Hurricane Milton. But 2 weeks prior, you can look at this clip right here. These were boats that were aground from the storm surge, from that first boat rack. So what do we do with this moving forward? Well, I think that people not from Florida are learning that even with a direct hit of a storm, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's where the worst destruction is going to be. Like, the north side was a lot more destruction, in my opinion, than what we had where the direct hit was. I mean, Helene, I think, was like 100 miles away from us, and I honestly feel like that was just as bad, or if not more, from a flooding perspective. And I also have several past clients that this was their first hurricane experience. And one of them, they're in Lakewood Ranch right now, and they felt like this was much more of an extreme thunderstorm with a lot of wind, but it wasn't as bad as she was personally anticipating. So now the question, what's gonna happen to the real estate market? I think it's the exact same story that I said last week after I posted the video talking about what it would do from Hurricane Helene. So make sure to watch that video next if you wanna dive into what parts of Sarasota are gonna take a hit, because there's gonna be things that take a hit, and I break that down in this video. I talk about the islands and keys and how they rebuild, the 50% rule. They can't necessarily rebuild some of these. They have to demo them to bring them to new code, and there are certain things that you're gonna see huge price reductions on that could be great for investors. I don't know, but check out that video because I really do a great job of breaking all that down. But listen, thanks for watching today, guys. Those of you that sent me emails, text messages during the storm, my family and I, we greatly appreciate it. I think when we turned our phone back on, we had 90, 100, more than that messages of just people, you guys texting me, checking in, seeing how our house was. So I really appreciate that. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, jump on my newsletter. You'll see that in the description below, and I'll see you in the next one.